that sense of things, and the way that I look at it as to how that could potentially happen. But what I want to encourage more than anything else, and Brent actually kind of made a really honest kind of heartfelt understanding, so where he himself as a young man, as a young brother, right, was like, you know what, man, I don't feel, this is what he had told me, I don't feel like I deserve the title of being called brother or whatever it is. And I kind of understand where he was coming from because of some of the things that he had been doing to me and to other people, and he's got a lot of things happening in his life that are confused. It's a difficult time for him. It's a difficult time for the young man. You know, a lot of people are picking and pulling and trying to get into his head and get into his ear, and because that's happening, guess what? He's got to pick and choose, and it's difficult. It's difficult at that point. But for most aspects of young brothers' personalities in their minds, in their future, from my own opinion, if I walked around calling myself a cracker, right, you know how I would legitimately inside, even though I might own the word in a sense like that, or a honky, or white trash, right, you know, there's a meaning attached to every name, even if you legitimately try to change that name and own that name and all of these other things like that. And so I think what happens is you run into these problems in a sense, to where even though, and this is another good example, right? You know, my name changed when I wasn't an orphan anymore, or after I got adopted. And so when people come up to me, and if I lived my life like people were calling me of my old name, my birth name, instead of the name that I believe God had spoken into my life, I would be a completely different human being than I am right now. The fact that I can do the things that I'm doing and be the human being that I've become is because my name is Andrew. And so if I walk up to a young man and I'm a brother or I'm not a brother or whatever it is, and I look at him and all I'm thinking when I see them is, what's up, in the back of their mind, psychologically, I assume and I think, there's still kind of that, like, man, yeah. That's why when I look at older black men or middle-aged black men, who didn't really grow up being, calling each other the N-word and so on and so forth, there's a different kind of vibe. But I find that same vibe among young brothers as well. I just don't think that it's as nurtured as it was among younger brothers back then at that point, where a lot of young brothers used to walk around, and you go to jail. I mean, I'm not encouraging you to go to jail to find out, but just be careful, I guess you could say. But if you go and get yourself around, some legitimate brothers that are 40, 50 years old, so on and so forth, you're going to find that among them, they're going to use that phrase of like, how you doing, brother? What's up, brother? What's going on? And it really kind of depends. But among those people, what you're going to find is that they carry themselves, they think, they feel, they believe a little bit differently than some of these younger cats running around, some of these young brothers running around. Not that they're bad kids, I think they're great kids. There's all kinds of young Chicago brothers that I used to kick it with, not on the regular, but that I had interactions with often, from 60-year-old men to 10, not 10, little kids, some little kids. But, those young ages, 18, 19, 20, 25, 30, kind of all over the place in Chicago to some extent. After I did the 90 days waiting to come back to Columbus, there are tons of young brothers that I was walking around. And if I, realistically walked up to them and I looked at them and I, spoke to them like they were like, what's up, brother? There's a completely different, one, they're going to try and figure out if you really mean what you're saying and so on and so forth. But for me, it's a little bit different. I've ultimately earned it. I guess you could say that. I don't really say that. But I've legitimately walked into these shoes to where I can say some things and that people to some extent have this, this understanding about me because of my past and my present and my predicted future, I guess you could say. So the one thing I want to encourage you, whether you be black or white, it doesn't really matter. When you're looking at each other, depending on how you look at it, but when you look at each other, one, young brother, don't look at yourself like the N-word, man. Look at yourself like a brother. Like, what's up? I met this old man the other, this older gentleman, elderly, and he looked at me and he was like, "How you doing, young man?" Now, from a white man's perspective, right? They said that to black people too, but I felt so good when he said that, because realistically, what you find is, young man, right? Look at the understanding when you break the word down. One, I'm young, right? I'm a young man. That makes you feel good. What's up, young brother? You just it gets lodged in your mind, and when it gets lodged in your mind, it starts to sit there, and it starts to grow, and it starts to manifest, and from that tree, from that simple seed that someone can plant in your mind, something beautiful can grow completely out of you. And I mean just incredibly, just right out of you. And so when you look at yourself in the mirror, don't look at yourself as don't look at yourself as the N-word, man. Look at yourself as a young brother, just a young brother, or an older brother, or a middle-aged brother, or now if you're a little kid, I'll be like, "What's up, little man? How you doing?" That's a little bit different. You're like a little man. You're little, but you try to be a man because you're little. It's yeah. Kevin Hart would be like, "What's up, little man? How you doing?" Or, "What's up, young brother?" So I mean, depending on how you want to say these things. When you look at yourself, and white people, you can apply the same damn thing. Young man, how you look at yourself. Look at yourself in a positive in a positive view. And I'll complete this with this last thing, and that last thing is that I had a boss named Lee Brady when I was in Chicago. He realistically had me go home every day and rehearse this script every single day. And when I rehearsed this script, I started to become this kind of man that I was rehearsing on script. And that script was I was a door-to-door salesman for ADT. So when you wake up in the morning and you look at yourself and you talk to one another, whether it be in the club or on the street or on the bus or whatever it is, don't look at try not to look at yourself as, to my understanding and to what I think and assume, as that I understand, I've heard it a million times, the understanding of what you think when you legitimately speak this way. Jay-Z, if you go and watch his song, the OJ song, right? I'm not saying he's being like, don't ever say this word anymore. But there's a really good connection that from one brother, which is Jay-Z, right, to a whole bunch of other brothers, you can realistically kind of understand some things. That Jay-Z, from my assumption, is legitimately being like, guess what, man? How long are we going, and not me personally, but how long are you going to realistically look at yourself in this derogative term that white people legitimately put on you 100+ years ago? Even if you do own the name, that's great. Own it, but don't call yourself that. Because even if you own the name, right, and you own the name hands down, you took control over it, you owned it, you rubbed it in the white man's face and all of America's face, and you were just like, fuck white America, we're going to call ourselves this. And that's what you did. And hey, guess what? I don't have a problem with that one. I think it's a very brave, courageous, and cool thing to do. But the only thing I encourage you to do is to think about it from a psychological standpoint now, and to be like, I wonder